The phone buzzing at 5:30 in the morning wasn't mine. I rolled over in bed, squinting at the nightstand where Beth's iPhone lit up like a Christmas tree. Text after text, all from someone labeled JH in her contacts. The bed beside me was cold, sheets twisted like she'd been wrestling demons all night, or maybe just wrestling with guilt. Not enough coffee in all of Maine for this conversation. Beth stumbled through the bedroom door, still wearing yesterday's black dress, the one she'd called professional when she left for the company party. Now it looked like she'd been sleeping in a car. Her makeup was smeared, lipstick gone, and she reeked of whiskey that definitely wasn't the cheap stuff we kept at home. "Mason," she whispered, seeing me awake. "I need to tell you something." I sat up, my back against the headboard, and watched her crumble. 20 years of marriage, and I'd never seen her look this small. She collapsed into the chair by our dresser, the one where she usually folded laundry while complaining about her coworkers. "I messed up," she said, tears already flowing. "Last night, after the party, I stayed late with Jeremy, my boss. We were drinking in his office, talking about the quarterly reports, and things got complicated. Jeremy Hart, regional director, 40-something, drives a BMW that costs more than most people's houses. I'd met him twice at company picnics, both times walking away feeling like I needed a shower. "Complicated how?" I asked, though my gut already knew. We were together, in his office. It meant nothing, Mason, nothing. I love you. I've always loved you. It was just the alcohol and the stress and... Stop! I held up my hand. Just stop talking for a second. Beth nodded, wiping her nose with the back of her hand. She looked like a kid caught stealing candy, all wide eyes and trembling lips. Part of me wanted to comfort her, the part that remembered our wedding day and the way she used to laugh at my terrible jokes. But a bigger part, the part that had been building electrical systems for 20 years, recognized when something was fundamentally broken. "You're telling me this happened once? Last night?" "Yes, just last night. I swear, Mason, it was a mistake. A terrible, stupid mistake." I reached for her phone, still buzzing on the nightstand. She didn't stop me, which told me everything I needed to know about her guilt level. The messages from JH went back weeks. Not explicit, but the kind of inside jokes and late-night check-ins that don't happen between a boss and employee who barely know each other. "Beth," I said, scrolling through the message history. "These texts, they go back to last month." Her face went white. "Those are just work things, projects, and... Can't wait to see you tomorrow. Wear the blue dress." "That's about quarterly reports?" She started crying harder, the kind of ugly sobbing that comes from being caught in a lie. I set the phone down and looked at my wife of 20 years, really looked at her. When had she started wearing perfume to work? When had she started coming home late 3 nights a week? When had she stopped looking me in the eye when she talked about her day? "How long?" I asked. "Mason, please." "How long, Beth?" 6 weeks, she whispered. "It started 6 weeks ago, but it's over now. I'm ending it. I already told him it was a mistake." 6 weeks. While I'd been working 60-hour weeks to pay for her new car, she'd been working late for entirely different reasons. While I'd been planning our anniversary dinner, she'd been planning how to sneak around with her boss. I stood up and walked to the window, looking out at our neighborhood. Mrs. Patterson was already up, walking her ancient golden retriever. The Kowalskis had their porch light on, probably getting ready for Tom's early shift at the paper mill. Normal people living normal lives, not dealing with this garbage at dawn on a Tuesday. "I believe you," I said, turning back to Beth. Her face brightened with relief. "You do?" "I believe it meant nothing to you. I believe you love me. I believe you're sorry." She stood up, moving toward me with her arms outstretched. "Thank you, Mason. Thank you for understanding. We can work through this. We can..." I stepped back before she could touch me. "I also believe in consequences." The relief drained from her face. "What do you mean?" I picked up my own phone from the nightstand and scrolled through my contacts. Found the number I was looking for, saved from last year's company picnic when Jeremy's wife had cornered me by the dessert table talking about their kitchen renovation. "What are you doing?" Beth asked, panic creeping into her voice. "Calling Linda Hart," I said, pressing the number. "Jeremy's wife. Remember her? Nice lady. Loves those cooking shows. I think she deserves to know what her husband's been up to." Beth lunged for my phone, but I was already walking toward the door. "Mason, no. Please, you'll ruin everything." "Everything's already ruined, Beth. I'm just making sure the damage gets distributed fairly." The phone rang twice before Linda answered, her voice groggy but polite. "Hello?" "Linda, this is Mason Parrish, Beth's husband. I'm sorry to call so early, but I thought you should know that your husband and my wife have been having an affair for the past 6 weeks. Last night, they were together in his office after the company party. Silence. Then, are you certain? I have text messages. Office security probably has footage. I'm sure HR would be interested in seeing both. Thank you for calling, Linda said, her voice steady as steel. I appreciate your honesty. The line went quiet. I looked at Beth, who was standing in our bedroom doorway like the world was ending. For her, it probably was. Why? She whispered. Why would you do that? Because actions have consequences, I said, already dialing the main number for her company, and because some things can't be fixed with tears and apologies. The automated system picked up, offering me a menu of options. I pressed the number for human resources and waited for someone to answer. Beth was begging now, promising to quit, to never see Jeremy again, to do anything if I would just hang up the phone. But I'd already made my choice. Some wires, once they're cut, can't be spliced back together. You have to tear out the whole system and start fresh. Human resources, this is Patricia speaking. Patricia, this is Mason Parrish. I need to report a violation of your workplace conduct policy. My wife, Beth Parrish, and her supervisor, Jeremy Hart, have been conducting an inappropriate relationship that includes after-hours meetings in his office. Beth sank to the floor in the hallway, her professional world crumbling with every word I spoke. By the time I finished giving Patricia the details, my wife's career was effectively over. I hung up and looked at the woman I'd married 20 years ago. She was still crying, still begging, still promising things would be different, but different wasn't enough anymore. Different was just another word for temporary. I'm going to make coffee, I said, stepping over her on my way to the kitchen. You might want to call a lawyer and maybe start looking for a new job. By 8:30, Beth's phone was ringing every 10 minutes. First it was Patricia from HR requesting an immediate meeting. Then Jeremy, his voice tight with panic when I answered Beth's phone instead of her. Where is she? He demanded. She needs to get down here right now. She's indisposed, I said, watching Beth pace our living room like a caged animal. Something about a family emergency. This is serious, Mason. There's been a complaint filed against both of us. Some kind of harassment allegation. Harassment? I laughed, the sound sharp enough to cut glass. That's an interesting way to describe adultery. Jeremy hung up. Beth glared at me from across the room, her eyes red from crying, but her anger finally starting to surface. You're destroying my life, she said. No, I replied, buttering my toast with deliberate calm. You destroyed your life. I'm just making sure everyone knows about it. My phone buzzed with a text from Sam, my business partner and the closest thing I had to a best friend. We'd been running Parrish and Associates Electrical for 15 years, ever since we'd gotten tired of working for other people who didn't understand the difference between doing a job right and doing it fast. Coffee in 20? Got some news about that downtown project. I texted back, make it 30, bring the truck, need to pick something up. Beth was getting dressed for work, probably hoping she could salvage something from the wreckage. She emerged from the bedroom in her navy suit, the one she wore when she needed to look professional and trustworthy. Today, it just made her look like she was dressed for a funeral. I'm going to explain everything to them, she said, checking her makeup in the hall mirror. I'll tell them it was mutual, that there was no harassment, that we're ending it voluntarily. Good luck with that, I said. I'm sure they'll be very understanding about their regional director having an affair with a subordinate. Companies love that kind of liability. She left without saying goodbye, her heels clicking on the hardwood floor like a countdown timer. I finished my coffee and called Sam back. Change of plans, I said when he answered. We're not picking up supplies, we're repossessing a car. Sam was quiet for a moment. He'd known Beth almost as long as I had, been to our barbecues and birthday parties, helped me surprise her with a new kitchen 3 years ago. What happened? He asked. She's been cheating with her boss. For 6 weeks. Ah, hell, Mason. I'm sorry. Don't be sorry, just bring the flatbed and meet me at her office building. The blue Honda is parked in space 14. That's her car, though. Won't she need... She can take the bus, I said, or call Jeremy. I'm sure he'd love to give her a ride. 20 minutes later, Sam pulled up in front of our house with the company flatbed truck. He was a big guy, 6'4", with hands like baseball mitts, but he had the gentle demeanor of someone who'd rather fix things than break them. Today, though, his face was set in hard lines. You sure about this? He asked as I climbed into the passenger seat. The car's in my name, I said. Insurance, registration, loan payments. All mine. She just drives it. That's not what I meant. I looked at my oldest friend, this man who'd stood beside me at my wedding and helped me carry Beth's father's casket 5 years later. She made her choice, Sam. Now I'm making mine. The drive to Beth's office took 15 minutes through downtown traffic. The building was one of those modern glass towers that looked impressive from the outside but felt like a fish bowl once you were inside. I'd visited exactly 3 times in the past year, always feeling underdressed in my work clothes among all the suits and ties. Beth's Honda was right where she always parked it, in the spot marked B. Parish near the main entrance. Sam backed the flatbed up to it while I walked into the lobby. The security guard, an older guy named Frank, who I'd chatted with during previous visits, looked up from his newspaper. "Hey, Mason, Beth forget something?" "You could say that," I replied. "I'm repossessing her car. It's in my name, but I wanted to give you a heads up so you don't think someone's stealing it." Frank's eyebrows went up. "Everything okay at home?" "Not really, Frank. Not really." By the time I got back outside, Sam had the Honda loaded and secured. I pulled out a piece of paper and wrote a quick note. "You'll need more than Uber to fix this mess. M." I tucked it under the windshield wiper of the BMW parked in the space marked J. Hart, Regional Director. Jeremy's car, pristine and expensive, sitting there like it owned the world. "What now?" Sam asked as we drove away. "Now we go get breakfast and wait for the fireworks to start." We ended up at Murphy's Diner, the kind of place where the coffee was strong, the bacon was crispy, and nobody asked questions they didn't want answered. Sam ordered his usual stack of pancakes while I picked at scrambled eggs and thought about the next phase of my plan. My phone rang around 10:15, Beth calling from her office line. "Where's my car?" she demanded, skipping any pretense of politeness. "Safe and sound," I said. "Parked in our driveway where it belongs." "I need it to get home." "Then you should have thought about that before you decided to work late with Jeremy." "Mason, please, I'm already in enough trouble here. They've suspended me pending an investigation. I need to be able to get around, to look for another job. You can walk, or take the bus, or call your boyfriend. I'm sure he'd be happy to help, assuming his wife doesn't take his keys away." I hung up and turned my attention back to Sam, who was studying me with the kind of look he usually reserved for complicated wiring diagrams. "You're really going to burn it all down, aren't you?" he said. "Some things need to burn," I replied. "Otherwise the rot just spreads." My phone buzzed with a text message from a number I didn't recognize. "This is Linda Hart, Jeremy's wife. Would you be available to meet this afternoon? I have some questions about what you told me this morning." I showed the message to Sam, who whistled low. "That's going to be an interesting conversation." "Should be," I agreed, typing back my response. Murphy's Diner on Oak Street. 2:00. The rest of the morning passed in a blur of routine work calls and scheduling meetings, normal business that felt surreal after the chaos of the past few hours. But normalcy was good. Normalcy was what I was fighting to get back to, even if it meant tearing down everything else first. At 1:55, Linda Hart walked into Murphy's Diner looking like she'd spent the morning with a lawyer. She was a small woman, maybe 5'3", with graying brown hair and the kind of quiet composure that came from years of dealing with difficult situations. "Mr. Parrish?" she said, approaching my table. "Mason," I said, standing to shake her hand. "Thank you for coming." She sat down across from me and folded her hands on the table. "I want to see those text messages." I handed her Beth's phone, which I'd confiscated before leaving the house. Linda scrolled through the conversation history, her face revealing nothing. After several minutes, she set the phone down and looked at me directly. "How long have you known?" she asked. "Since this morning," she confessed after I found the messages. "And you called me immediately. Seemed like the right thing to do." Linda nodded slowly. "Jeremy came home around lunchtime, suspended without pay pending investigation. He's claiming it was all your wife's idea, that she pursued him." "Maybe she did," I said. "Doesn't matter to me who started it. What matters is that it happened." "It matters to me," Linda said quietly, "because this isn't the first time." Linda Hart's words hung in the air between us like smoke from an electrical fire. This wasn't the first time. I should have been surprised, but somehow I wasn't. Guys like Jeremy Hart didn't just stumble into affairs, they cultivated them. "How many others?" I asked. "That I know about? 3, including your wife?" Linda's voice was steady, but her hands trembled slightly as she reached for her coffee cup. "The first was his secretary. About 5 years ago. I found hotel receipts in his jacket pocket. When I confronted him, he cried, begged forgiveness, promised it would never happen again. But it did. 2 years later, a client this time, some young architect working on a development project. That one lasted 8 months before her husband called me." I felt something cold settle in my chest. Not anger, exactly, more like recognition. The same feeling I got when I opened an electrical panel and saw years of shoddy work, dangerous shortcuts, and code violations that had been hidden behind a clean facade. "What did you do?" I asked. "Nothing," Linda said, and the admission seemed to cost her something. "I stayed, made excuses, told myself it was for the kids, though they're both in college now, told myself he would change. And now?" Linda reached into her purse and pulled out a manila envelope. "Now I'm done making excuses. These are copies of Jeremy's personnel files from his previous job. I have a friend in HR there. Turns out he was transferred here after a harassment complaint. The company settled quietly rather than face a lawsuit." I opened the envelope and scanned the documents inside. Performance reviews that mentioned boundary issues. A formal complaint from a female employee about unwanted advances. A recommendation for enhanced sensitivity training that had apparently been ignored. "Why are you showing me this?" I asked. "Because I want him gone," Linda said simply. "Not just suspended, not just reprimanded, gone. And I think you want the same thing." She was right, but not for the reasons she might have expected. I didn't want Jeremy Hart gone because he'd slept with my wife. I wanted him gone because he was a predator, and predators needed to be removed from positions where they could hurt people. "What do you have in mind?" I asked. Linda smiled for the first time since she'd walked into the diner. It wasn't a pleasant expression. "The company is having their annual community festival this Saturday. Big public event, lots of employees and their families, local media coverage. Jeremy will be there, trying to maintain his image while the investigation is ongoing. And I think it's time everyone knew exactly what kind of man they've been working for." We spent the next hour planning what Linda called the reveal. She had documentation going back years, evidence of a pattern of behavior that the company couldn't ignore or cover up. I had the local connections and the kind of blue-collar credibility that would make people listen. By the time we shook hands in the parking lot, I felt something I hadn't experienced since finding those text messages on Beth's phone: purpose. My phone rang as I was driving home. Beth again, this time from her cell. "Mason, we need to talk." "I'm listening." "Not over the phone, in person. I'm at Starbucks on Main Street. Can you meet me here?" "Why would I do that?" "Because I have something you need to hear, about Jeremy, about what really happened." I almost hung up, almost kept driving toward home and the workshop where I could lose myself in the familiar routine of stripping wire and connecting circuits. But curiosity won out, the same curiosity that had made me a good electrician. When something wasn't working right, you had to trace the problem back to its source. The Starbucks was crowded with the usual afternoon mix of college students and office workers grabbing their caffeine fix. I found Beth at a corner table, looking smaller than I'd ever seen her. She'd changed out of her business suit into jeans and a sweater, like she was trying to become someone else. "Thank you for coming," she said as I sat down across from her. "You've got 5 minutes." Beth took a shaky breath. "Jeremy recorded us." The words hit me like a live wire. "What?" "That night, in his office, he had his phone set up on the bookshelf. I didn't know until this morning when he showed me the video. He's been recording all of his encounters." "Why are you telling me this?" "Because he's threatening to release it if I don't back up his story. He wants me to say that I seduced him, that I was the aggressor, that he tried to stop it, but I wouldn't take no for an answer." I stared at my wife, this woman I'd loved for 20 years, and felt something fundamental shift inside me. Not heartbreak this time, something harder, something that would last longer than grief. "And what did you tell him?" "I told him no. I told him I wouldn't lie for him, even if it meant everyone seeing that video." Beth's eyes filled with tears again. "I know I don't deserve your help, Mason. I know I've lost any right to ask you for anything, but he can't be allowed to do this to other women." "Other women?" "I wasn't the first, and I won't be the last. He showed me photos on his phone, videos. He's been collecting them like trophies." The cold feeling in my chest spread outward, reaching my fingers and toes. Jeremy Hart wasn't just a cheating husband or an unfaithful boss. He was something much worse. "Where is he now?" I asked. "Home, I think, planning his defense strategy. He thinks he can control the narrative, make himself look like the victim." I stood up. My 5 minutes long expired. "He's wrong." "What are you going to do?" "Whatever it takes," I said, and walked away before she could ask any more questions. The drive to Jeremy Hart's house took 20 minutes through suburban streets lined with oak trees and well-maintained lawns. His neighborhood was the kind of place where people drove luxury cars and hired landscaping services, where problems were solved with money rather than effort. I parked across the street from his house, a sprawling colonial with a 3-car garage and a circular driveway. Jeremy's BMW was parked out front, and I could see lights on and what looked like a home office on the second floor. My phone buzzed with a text from Sam. "Where are you? We've got that estimate to finish." I typed back, "Handle it without me." Something came up. "Everything okay?" "Will be." I sat in my truck for an hour, watching Jeremy's house and thinking about electrical systems. Every building had a main panel, a central point where all the power flowed through. Cut the right wire at the panel, and you could shut down the entire system. But you had to know which wire to cut, and you had to be willing to work in the dark. Jeremy Hart's main panel was his reputation, his standing in the community, his position at the company, his image as a successful businessman and family man. Linda had given me the tools to cut those wires. Beth had given me the motivation. Now I just had to decide how much damage I was willing to cause. Saturday morning arrived gray and drizzling, the kind of weather that made everything look washed out and tired. Perfect for what I had planned. The community festival was being held in Riverside Park, a 20-acre stretch of grass and trees that bordered the Penobscot River. By 10 o'clock, the place was crawling with families, food trucks, and employees from Jeremy's company wearing matching polo shirts and forced smiles. I arrived early, dressed in my best jeans and a button-down shirt that Beth had bought me for Christmas 2 years ago. Sam was with me, looking uncomfortable in anything that wasn't work clothes, but committed to seeing this through. "You sure about this?" he asked for the third time as we walked toward the main pavilion. "I'm sure. Because once you light this fuse, there's no putting it out." "Good," I said. "Some things need to burn completely." Linda Hart was waiting for us near the information booth, looking nervous but determined. She'd traded her usual conservative dress for jeans and a sweater, trying to blend in with the crowd. In her hands was a manila folder thick with documentation. "He's here," she said, nodding toward the company booth where Jeremy was glad-handing customers and posing for photos with the local mayor. Acting like nothing's wrong. I watched Jeremy work the crowd, his smile bright and confident, his handshake firm and practiced. He was good at this, I had to admit. Good at projecting success and trustworthiness, at making people believe he was someone worth following. "What's the plan?" Sam asked. "Simple," I said. "We wait for the right moment, then we tell everyone exactly who Jeremy Hart really is." That moment came an hour later, when Jeremy took the microphone to address the crowd. He was introducing the company's new community outreach program, talking about corporate responsibility, and giving back to the people who made success possible. "Our company has always been built on trust," he said, his voice carrying easily across the park. "Trust between employer and employee, trust between business and community, trust that we'll always do the right thing, even when no one is watching." I started walking toward the pavilion, Linda beside me and Sam following reluctantly behind. People stepped aside as we approached, sensing something was about to happen, but not sure what. Jeremy saw me coming when I was still 20 feet away. His smile faltered for just a moment before snapping back into place, but I caught the flicker of fear in his eyes. "And now," he said into the microphone, "I'd like to introduce some of our community partners who—" "Jeremy," I called out, loud enough for the crowd to hear. "We need to talk." The microphone picked up my voice, amplifying it across the park. Conversations stopped. Heads turned. Jeremy's smile became a grimace. "Mason," he said, trying to sound friendly. "This isn't really the time or place." "Sure it is," I said, stepping up onto the platform. "This is exactly the time and place to talk about trust." I took the microphone from Jeremy's hand before he could protest. The crowd was watching now, sensing drama, but not sure what kind. I looked out at the sea of faces, employees and families and community members who deserved to know the truth. "My name is Mason Parrish," I said. "My wife works for this company. Worked anyway, until she was suspended this week for having an affair with her boss." A murmur ran through the crowd. Jeremy tried to step forward, but Sam moved to block him, all 6'4" of him suddenly looking very intimidating. "Now, I'm not here to embarrass my wife," I continued. "She made her choice, and she's dealing with the consequences. But I am here to talk about her boss, Jeremy Hart, and the pattern of behavior that led to this situation." Linda stepped forward and handed me the manila folder. I opened it and pulled out the first document. "This is a harassment complaint filed against Jeremy Hart at his previous job," I said, holding up the paper so the crowd could see it. "The company settled out of court rather than go to trial." Jeremy finally found his voice. "This is slander," he shouted. "Security. Someone call security." But there was no security at a community festival, just volunteers and employees who were too shocked to move. I pulled out another document. "This is a performance review from the same company, noting Jeremy's inappropriate relationships with subordinates and recommending counseling that was apparently never completed." The crowd was buzzing now, people pulling out their phones to record what was happening. I saw several local news reporters pushing through the crowd, their cameras already rolling. "And this," I said, pulling out the final document, "is a sworn statement from Jeremy's wife, Linda Hart, detailing 3 separate affairs that she's aware of, including the one with my wife." Linda stepped up to the microphone. "I stayed silent for too long," she said, her voice steady despite the magnitude of what she was doing. "I made excuses, I covered for him, I enabled his behavior because I was afraid of the consequences. But I'm more afraid of what happens if I stay silent." Jeremy was backing away now, his face pale and his hands shaking. "This is a setup," he said. "These people are lying. They're trying to destroy me because—" "Because what?" I asked, taking the microphone back. "Because your wife found out about your affairs? Because my wife got fired for sleeping with her boss? Because you've been preying on women for years and finally got caught?" The crowd was turning ugly now, the mood shifting from curiosity to anger. I saw company employees removing their polo shirts, distancing themselves from the logo and what it represented. I saw families gathering their children and leaving, not wanting to be associated with the spectacle. "The truth is simple," I said into the microphone. "Jeremy Hart is a predator who uses his position of power to manipulate and exploit women. He records his encounters without consent. He threatens to release those recordings if his victims don't cooperate with his version of events. And he's been doing it for years while his company looked the other way." Jeremy broke then, the mask finally slipping completely. "You don't know what you're talking about," he screamed. "Your wife came on to me. She begged for it. I have proof." The admission hung in the air like a toxic cloud. Even his defenders in the crowd took a step back, finally seeing him for what he really was. "There's your proof," I said into the microphone. Straight from his mouth. I handed the microphone to Linda and stepped down from the platform. The crowd was dispersing now, people talking in hushed, angry tones as they processed what they'd just witnessed. Local reporters were chasing after Jeremy, who was fleeing toward the parking lot with his career in ruins behind him. Sam clapped me on the shoulder. "Well," he said, "that went better than expected." "It's not over yet," I replied, watching Jeremy's BMW speed out of the parking lot. This was just the opening act. Linda joined us, looking drained but relieved. "What happens now?" she asked. "Now we wait for the company to do damage control," I said. "They'll fire Jeremy to protect themselves, launch an investigation, maybe bring in outside consultants to review their policies. Your husband's career is finished." "And Beth?" I thought about my wife, probably watching the news coverage from wherever she was staying. She'd made her choice weeks ago when she decided to have an affair. Today was just the consequence finally catching up. "Beth's not my problem anymore," I said. "She's an adult. She can figure out her own life." We walked back to my truck in silence, the festival continuing around us but with a different energy now. Subdued, cautious, the kind of atmosphere that follows a storm when people are checking for damage and trying to figure out how to rebuild. My phone buzzed with a text message from an unknown number. "This isn't over. You have no idea what you've started." I showed it to Sam, who frowned. "Jeremy?" "Probably." "You worried?" I thought about the question as we drove away from the park. Was I worried? About retaliation, about lawsuits, about the consequences of what I'd just done? "No," I said finally. "I'm not worried. Some fights are worth having, even if you might lose, especially if you might lose." But as we drove through town, past the familiar streets and buildings that had been my home for 20 years, I couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning. Jeremy Hart wasn't the type to go quietly, and desperate men with nothing left to lose were capable of almost anything. The real fight was just getting started. Monday morning brought consequences like a thunderstorm brings rain, sudden, overwhelming, and impossible to ignore. I was in my workshop, rewiring a junction box for the Henderson renovation, when my phone started ringing. First call was from a reporter at the Portland Press-Herald, wanting a comment about the allegations against Regional Director Jeremy Hart. Second was from a lawyer representing Jeremy's company, requesting that I cease and desist from making defamatory statements. Third was from Beth. I let that one go to voicemail. Sam walked in around 9, carrying 2 cups of coffee and wearing the expression he usually reserved for bad news. "We've got problems," he said, setting one of the cups on my workbench. "What kind of problems?" "The permit for the downtown project got pulled. City says there's a review of contractor qualifications that needs to happen before work can continue." I set down my wire strippers and looked at my business partner. "Jeremy's doing damage control." "That's what I figure. Question is, what are we going to do about it?" Before I could answer, my phone rang again. This time it was Linda Hart, and she sounded scared. Mason, we need to meet. Something's happened. What kind of something? Jeremy came home last night. He's been drinking, and he's not stable. He's making threats, saying he's going to destroy everyone who ruined his life. Where is he now? I don't know. He left this morning with a suitcase and his laptop. But before he left, he showed me something on his computer. Videos, Mason. Not just of your wife. Other women, too. He's threatening to release all of them unless the company reinstates him and drops the investigation. I felt that familiar cold sensation spreading through my chest. How many videos? Dozens. Going back years. Some of the women are married, some have children. If those videos get out... They won't, I said, though I wasn't sure how I was going to prevent it. How can you be sure? Because Jeremy Hart made one crucial mistake. He thinks he's the only one who knows how to play dirty. I hung up and turned to Sam. Change of plans. We're not working on the Henderson job today. What are we doing? We're going to war. The first stop was Jeremy's house, a sprawling colonial in an upscale neighborhood where the lawns were perfect and the secrets were buried deep. Linda met us at the front door, her face pale and her hands shaking. He took his computer, she said, leading us into the house. But he left this. She handed me a printed email, obviously composed in haste and sent to what looked like the entire company directory. The subject line read, "The truth about my accusers." I scanned the message, feeling my anger build with each paragraph. Jeremy was painting himself as the victim of a conspiracy, claiming that Linda and I had fabricated evidence to destroy his career. He was threatening to release proof of his innocence unless the company reversed its decision to suspend him. When did he send this? I asked. This morning, around 6, before the company opened. Sam was reading over my shoulder, his jaw tight with anger. This guy doesn't know when to quit. Yes, he does, I said. He just hasn't reached that point yet. I pulled out my phone and called the one person I knew who could help us track down Jeremy's location. My cousin Danny worked for the phone company, installing cell towers and maintaining equipment. More importantly, he had access to tools that could locate any phone signal in the area. Danny, it's Mason. I need a favor. What kind of favor? The kind that doesn't get discussed at family reunions. There was a pause. How illegal are we talking? Not illegal, just creative. I'll call you back in 20 minutes. While we waited, Linda showed us Jeremy's home office, a shrine to corporate success with awards and photos covering every wall. But when I looked closer, I noticed something else. A hidden camera mounted behind one of the picture frames pointed directly at the desk. He was recording here too, I said, pointing out the camera to Sam. Linda's face went white. In our home? He was recording in our home? Probably for insurance, Sam said. Guy like that, he'd want leverage on everyone, including his wife. My phone buzzed with a text from Danny. Your guy is at the Riverside Motel on Route 2. Room 14. Signal's been stationary for the past 3 hours. Got him, I said, showing the message to Sam. What's the plan? I thought about it for a moment, weighing our options. We could call the police, but Jeremy hadn't technically broken any laws yet. We could confront him directly, but that would just give him a chance to release the videos out of spite. Or we could do what I'd been planning since this whole mess started. We could take away his power completely. Linda, I said, turning to Jeremy's wife, I need you to call the company's IT department. Tell them Jeremy's been using company equipment to record employees without their consent. Tell them you have evidence. What evidence? I pointed to the hidden camera. That, and whatever other surveillance equipment he's got hidden around this house. What are you going to do? Sam and I are going to have a conversation with your husband, a final conversation. The Riverside Motel was the kind of place where people went to disappear, at least temporarily. 40 rooms of faded carpet and broken dreams, surrounded by a parking lot that had seen better decades. Jeremy's BMW looked out of place among the rusted pickup trucks and economy cars. We found room 14 easily enough. The lights were on, and I could hear the sound of a television through the thin walls. I knocked on the door, hard enough to rattle the frame. Jeremy, it's Mason Parrish. We need to talk. Silence. Then footsteps and the sound of a chain being removed from the door. Jeremy opened it just wide enough to see out, his face unshaven and his eyes red and strained. What do you want? To make a deal. I'm not interested in deals. You will be, I said, holding up my phone. Because in about 10 minutes, your company's IT department is going to remotely wipe every device registered to your corporate account, including the laptop you're using to store those videos. Jeremy's face went pale. You can't do that. Actually, I can. Corporate security policy gives them the right to protect company data by any means necessary. And since you've been using company equipment to record employees without consent, those videos are considered stolen company property. I have backups. Where? On your home computer? The one that Linda is turning over to the FBI right now as evidence of illegal surveillance? Jeremy stepped back from the door, his composure finally cracking completely. This is harassment. I'll sue you for everything you're worth. With what money? Sam asked, speaking for the first time. You're unemployed, remember, and about to be divorced. Good luck finding a lawyer who'll work for free. I pushed the door open and stepped into the room. It smelled like desperation and cheap whiskey, with Jeremy's clothes scattered across the unmade bed, and his laptop open on the small table. Here's the deal, I said. You're going to delete every video, every photo, every piece of evidence you've collected over the years. You're going to resign from your job effective immediately. You're going to sign whatever divorce papers Linda puts in front of you, and you're going to leave town and never come back. And if I don't? I smiled, the expression feeling strange on my face after everything that had happened. If you don't, then I release the security footage from your office building showing you bringing women up to your office after hours. I release the financial records showing you using company funds for hotel rooms and expensive dinners. I release the sworn statements from 3 other women who are willing to testify about your behavior. You're bluffing. Try me. Jeremy stared at me for a long moment, probably trying to calculate his odds of calling my bluff and winning. Whatever he saw in my face convinced him not to take that chance. Fine, he said, moving to his laptop. But this isn't over. Yes, it is, I said, watching him delete file after file. This is exactly how it ends. 20 minutes later, we walked out of the motel room, leaving Jeremy Hart with nothing but his suitcase and his regrets. The laptop had been wiped clean, the videos were gone, and the man who had terrorized women for years was finally powerless. Think he'll actually leave town? Sam asked as we drove away. Doesn't matter, I said. He's finished either way. No job, no reputation, no leverage. He's just another middle-aged man with a history of bad decisions. My phone rang as we pulled into the parking lot of our office. Beth's number appeared on the screen, and this time I answered. It's over, I said before she could speak. Mason, It's over, Beth. Jeremy's gone, the videos are deleted, and you're free to start whatever life you want to build. Just build it somewhere else. What about us? I looked out at the town I'd called home for 20 years, the streets I'd driven down thousands of times, the buildings where I'd installed electrical systems that would outlast me. This was my place, my life, my choice. There is no us, I said. There hasn't been for 6 weeks. You just forgot to mention it. I hung up and turned to Sam. Come on, we've got work to do. The Henderson job? All of it, I said. We've got a business to run and a reputation to rebuild, and we've got all the time in the world to do it right. As we walked toward our office, I felt something I hadn't experienced in days. Peace. Not happiness, exactly, and certainly not satisfaction. But peace, the kind that comes from knowing you've done what needed to be done, regardless of the cost. Jeremy Hart was gone. Beth was gone. The lies and the betrayal and the manipulation were gone. What remained was the work, the craft, the simple satisfaction of connecting wires and making things function the way they were supposed to. Some systems could be repaired when they broke down. Others had to be completely rewired. I was ready to start fresh,